What's going on, Workforce? Brian here, and let's discuss Final Fantasy XIV on the Nintendo Switch. So earlier this year, I did a State of the Game post talking about Final Fantasy XIV running on the Nintendo Switch and whether this was possible from a technological perspective, the Switch being underpowered, obviously in before anybody says PS3 or Switch Limitations. And that's kind of the key, I guess, point is that obviously I think a lot of people really don't want to see that. We just left PS3 and take a step backwards, not necessarily to the PS3, but to something that's slightly, a little bit more powerful than that, would feel or could feel limiting, especially in how many expansions worth. Like, what are we talking about? 1 or 2? But this year at E3, something really kind of shook the foundation of what I believe to be possible. I'm going to say this, like, PlayStation is super forward thinking when it comes to PlayStation Now, and whether you like the service or not, I mean, it's only going to, I think, get better from here as internet connection speeds increase, as more and more broadband becomes available, as latency is reduced in these type of streaming services. The possibilities are really endless, and this could be something, a bigger topic for a later video about the one console future or something of that nature. But for the most part, you had EA and Microsoft announcing big investments into a cloud-based streaming service, and Microsoft saying like it's for any device. You already had PlayStation doing it. Capcom's been doing it. You can play in Japan, at least, you can be playing Resident Evil 7 on the Switch, but it is cloud-based. And obviously one weakness here is that if you don't have an internet connection, and the Switch being a little bit more of a portable system, if you don't really have an internet connection, well, then you can't play these single-player games. But outside of single-player games, when it comes to online only, like a game like Final Fantasy XIV, or any game of that same kind of caliber, it would only and could only make sense if you had internet to begin with in the first place. And while that is a unique problem to solve, especially from a system saying, hey, you can play these games as long as you have Wi-Fi and nowhere else and no other option. And so I see the argument, obviously, where you're talking about single player games needing that requirement. But with Final Fantasy XIV being an online only multiplayer game, having that requirement seems to make sense. And also it is already subscription based. It's not like you would then be paying a subscription to a single player game that you could just go buy once and play at home. And obviously in the single player world, you're then just subscribing or paying whatever that monthly subscription fee is for the pleasure of streaming it to this device. So I think MMOs specifically lend themselves probably as a better target audience to really kind of test this out. Obviously, the issue of latency is still going to be a problem, but if the Switch was running a version of the game installed on an insanely system requirement, PC or cluster of VMs that run all the software on, the question then is that it is about that latency and that pickup, and that would only be the limitation in my mind that someone would face. Is that, oh, I was standing in that AOE. Because on my screen, it was not there. And this is a problem that people with poor internet connections currently can already face within the game. And so the question is that what is going to be the requirement, internet connection-wise, for this to even work in a degree that is fun and and available for all? I'm stuttering on all this stuff because it's really quite interesting. I'm trying to wrap my thought around these concepts, and that's why I really want this to be kind of a let's discuss video where I really kind of leave the question up to you guys. So if hardware is not the issue, if the Switch doesn't matter how powerful it is because the game is being processed and rendered elsewhere, and if the only issue is the latency that is between the device and the server itself, which is already communicating, so it's kind of like, how many more steps is this going to be possible? Like, would this be running within Square Enix's data center, so the hop from the data center to the server that you're streaming from is incredibly low? Like, you're talking about, hey, my ping is at from the game where it's actually running to the server is like 5 because it's right next to it, but it's then your ping to your device. That would be the challenge and the technological challenge there. It changes the game in its own self, because I think this is something that I would definitely subscribe to. Because then as your internet improves, as the latency within these systems, it continues to improve. And we're not just talking about 2018, we're talking about 2020 and 2025 and 2030. Like, as the market seems to be making the investment into this type of platform, there could be 100 or 1,000 other games that are possible through it. But as far as 14 goes, I think this would be amazing to start. Let's say there was some latency and some fights were really tough, like Titan. Titan is a very very tough fight if you have a very bad latency on your device. This would end up saving, like, well, okay, maybe I don't go do that, but I can still craft, I can still gather, I can still have the full Final Fantasy XIV experience, on a handheld version. And this is kind of what, we saw with PlayStation 4 and Vita. Like, you could play and stream the game to your Vita. It was very uncomfortable to do so for any long period of time. When we're talking about, like, running a dungeon, like, it just did not fit really well. And that's, I guess the question is that was that more just the device's form factor? Because I feel like the Switch in handheld mode is way more comfortable than the Vita was for long play sessions. And the same thing with the 3DS. Like, the 3DS, these handheld devices, we're really about kind of a 30-minute kind of max. Like, anything over 30 minutes, like, you really want to set down the device, shake out your hands, and feel a little bit better. So this is the thought that's just been rummaging around my head. This is a little bit of a rambly video. I am working on a couple of things that have a little bit more depth and presentation to them, but I just wanted to kind of put that question off to you guys. 14 Cloud, it's like that's where we see PSO2 Cloud. More and more options, and that in and of itself makes the Switch kind of unlimited in terms of power, and only limited by your internet connection speed, both I would assume up and down. As far as it goes. So I leave the question off to you. Sound off in the comments below. Let me know what you're thinking. Is this something that sounds interesting? What are your concerns? Like, if they did this, what would be some of your concerns? And it could be anything. I mean, even limitations. I just think that as the hardware requirements continue to increase, this would prevent any kind of limitation from RAM and processor speed and things like that. That you would have to worry about on whatever device you choose to play from. And this could also enable itself for many other devices as well. But anyway, sound off below. Let's have that conversation. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Forgive the rambliness today. It's been a crazy weekend. I'll share more about that later. But for Work to Game, guys, my name is Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope to see you in my next. But until then, hope you have a fantastic week. Take care.
Hey, what's going on? This is the end screens. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit one of these whatevers around the screen for some even more fun. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know what Google's thinking.